Welcome to Bio Bytes, where we dive into the lives of influential figures, one bite at a time. Today, we're exploring the life and journey of a man who's left an undeniable mark on American history and culture, Donald J. Trump, 45th President of the United States. Who is Donald Trump? Donald Trump served as the 45th President of the United States, completing a single term from 2017 until 2021. And now he's back in the political spotlight, vying for the presidency once again in the 2024 election. Before his political career, Donald Trump was widely recognized as a real estate mogul and a familiar face from television. His rise to fame began back in 1980 when he opened the Grand Hyatt in New York City, making him one of the most prominent developers in the city. Then, in 2004, he transitioned to reality TV, starring in the hit NBC series, The Apprentice. In 2015, Donald Trump announced his candidacy for president on the Republican ticket, marking the beginning of a unique and polarizing journey in American politics. Trump won the Republican nomination in July 2016, and that November, he achieved a surprising victory over Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton, securing his place as the 45th President of the United States. However, 4 years later, he lost his bid for re-election to former Vice President Joe Biden. Since then, Trump has remained a highly visible figure in American politics, and he even made history as the first former president to be indicted on criminal charges in March of 2023. Let's dive deeper into the man behind the headlines. Here are some quick facts. Full name: Donald John Trump. Born June 14, 1946. Birthplace: Queens, New York. Donald Trump has been married 3 times, to Ivana Trump, Marla Maples, and currently to Melania Trump. He has 5 children: Donald Jr., Ivanka, Eric, Tiffany, and Barron. Now a look back at where it all began. Early life and education. Donald John Trump was born on June 14, 1946, in Queens, New York City. He was the 4th of 5 children born to Frederick and Mary Trump. His father, Fred Trump, was a successful real estate developer, and his mother, Mary, was a New York socialite and philanthropist. Growing up, Donald was known as an energetic and assertive child. During the post-war real estate boom of the 1950s, the Trump family's wealth grew, paving the way for Donald's future ventures. Raised Presbyterian by his mother, Trump identifies as a mainline Protestant today. At just 13 years old, Donald Trump's parents made a pivotal decision in his life. They sent him to the New York Military Academy, hoping the school's discipline would direct his high energy in a positive way. It turned out to be a good match for young Donald. He thrived at the academy, standing out both academically and socially. By the time he graduated in 1964, he'd earned a reputation as a star athlete and a student leader. After the military academy, Trump enrolled at Fordham University in New York in 1964. 2 years later, he transferred to the Wharton School of Finance at the University of Pennsylvania, where he continued his studies in economics. Trump graduated from Wharton in 1968 with a degree in economics. His college years weren't just about academics, though. Every summer, Trump worked for his father's real estate business, learning the ropes of the industry that would define his career. During this time, Trump also received education deferments for the Vietnam War draft. After graduating, he obtained a 1Y medical deferment, exempting him from service. From these formative experiences, Trump was poised to begin his journey into the world of real estate and business. Donald Trump was born into a large family, the 4th of 5 children. Father. Donald's father, Frederick Trump, was a builder and real estate developer, focusing on constructing and managing middle-income apartments across Queens, Staten Island, and Brooklyn. Fred Trump was instrumental in shaping Donald's interest in real estate, and the two shared a close relationship. Fred passed away in 1999. Mother, Mary Ann MacLeod, Donald's mother, immigrated from Tong, Scotland in 1929 when she was just 17 years old. She married Fred Trump in 1936, and together they settled in Jamaica, Queens, a neighborhood with a strong Western European immigrant community. As the family's wealth grew, Mary became a prominent New York socialite and philanthropist. She passed away in the year 2000. Siblings. Donald Trump is the 4th of 5 siblings. His sister, Mary Ann Trump Berry, served as a senior judge of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit. Soon after Donald became president, she chose an inactive status, eventually retiring in February 2019. Fred Trump Jr., Donald's older brother, initially worked with their father before becoming a pilot. He struggled with alcoholism and tragically passed away in 1981 at just 43 years old. This loss deeply affected Donald, who's often shared that Fred's experience influenced his decision to avoid alcohol and drugs, saying, "He had a profound impact on my life because you never know where you're going to end up." Elizabeth Trump Grau, Donald's older sister, is a retired banker, married to film producer James Grau. Donald's younger brother, Robert Trump, spent much of his career within the family business. He passed away in 2020 at the age of 71. In 1977, Donald Trump married his first wife, Ivana Trump, born Ivana Zelnikova Winkelmeyer. Ivana was a New York fashion model and had previously been an alternate on the 1972 Czech Olympic ski team. Within the Trump Organization, Ivana took on a significant role, named as vice president in charge of design. She was instrumental in supervising major projects, including the renovations of the Commodore and the Plaza Hotel. Together, Donald and Ivana had 3 children: Donald Trump Jr., Ivanka, and Eric. Their marriage, however, went through a turbulent period, leading to a highly publicized divorce, which was finalized in 1992. In 1993, Donald Trump married his second wife, Marla Maples, an actress he had been involved with for some time. The couple had a daughter together, named Tiffany. However, the marriage was short-lived. Trump filed for a highly publicized divorce from Maples in 1997, which was finalized in June 1999. As part of their prenuptial agreement, Maples received a settlement of $2 million. Donald Trump is currently married to Melania Trump, formerly Melania Knaus, a model from Slovenia who is over 23 years younger than Trump. The couple married in January 2005 in a lavish and widely publicized ceremony. Among the notable guests were Hillary Clinton and former President Bill Clinton. Donald Trump is the father of 5 children from his 3 marriages. With his first wife, Ivana Trump, Donald has 3 children. Their first son, Donald Trump Jr., was born in 1977. Their daughter, Ivanka Trump, was born in 1981, followed by their youngest son together, Eric Trump, born in 1984. With his second wife, Marla Maples, Trump had a daughter, Tiffany Trump, born in 1993. Trump's current wife, Melania, gave birth to his youngest child, Barron Trump, in March 2006. The Trump family in business and politics. Trump's 2 eldest sons, Donald Jr. and Eric, serve as executive vice presidents for the Trump Organization. They took on the responsibility of managing the family business while their father served as president. Trump's daughter, Ivanka, was also an executive vice president at the Trump Organization. She later stepped away from both the company and her fashion label to take on a role in her father's administration, serving as an unpaid assistant to the president. Her husband, Jared Kushner, joined the administration as a senior advisor. Following in his father's footsteps, Donald Trump embarked on a career in real estate development, adding his own ambitious vision to the family business. Trump's ventures under the Trump Organization cover a broad spectrum. These include the iconic Trump Tower, casinos in Atlantic City, and media franchises like The Apprentice and Miss Universe. He's also been involved in prominent real estate deals across New York City, Florida, and Los Angeles, including major projects with the Javits Center and the Grand Hyatt, New York. In 2017, Trump's federal income disclosure forms highlighted his golf courses, such as Trump National Doral and Mar-a-Lago in Florida, as some of his top-earning properties, accounting for roughly half of his income. Beyond real estate and entertainment, Trump's business interests stretch into aircraft, merchandise, and royalties from his best-selling books. Among them are The Art of the Deal, which captures his business philosophy, and Crippled America, How to Make America Great Again, outlining his vision for the country. In 1987, Donald Trump published his book, The Art of the Deal, co-authored with Tony Schwartz. In this book, Trump shares insights into his approach to making successful business deals. In one memorable line, Trump writes, "I don't do it for the money. I've got enough, much more than I'll ever need. I do it to do it. Deals are my art form." The Art of the Deal quickly became a New York Times bestseller, although the exact number of copies sold has been debated. Estimates suggest somewhere between 1 and 4 million copies to date. Over time, Tony Schwartz, Trump's co-author, became one of the book's most vocal critics. Schwartz later expressed regret, saying he felt remorseful for helping portray Trump in a way that, in his words, made him more appealing than he is. Over the years, Donald Trump's net worth has been a subject of public debate. Because he hasn't publicly released his tax returns, it's impossible to determine his wealth with complete accuracy. either in the past or today. However, on his 2017 federal financial disclosure form, published by the Office of Government Ethics, Trump valued his businesses at a minimum of $137 billion. His 2018 disclosure form estimated his revenue that year at a minimum of $434 million from all sources. In 1990, Trump claimed his own net worth was in the neighborhood of $1.5 billion, but at that time, the real estate market was in decline, reducing the value of Trump's empire and the income it generated. The Trump Organization ultimately needed a significant influx of loans to prevent collapse, raising concerns about whether the corporation could survive bankruptcy. To some observers, Trump's decline was seen as symbolic of the business, economic, and social excesses that had defined the 1980s. In May 2019, an investigation by the New York Times examined a decade of Trump's tax information, finding that between 1985 and 1994, his businesses lost money every year. The Times estimated that Trump's businesses sustained $1.17 billion in losses over that period. Trump later responded on Twitter, calling the Times report a highly inaccurate fake news hit job. He explained that he reported losses for tax purposes, describing it as a sport among real estate developers. During Donald Trump's 2016 presidential run, his net worth and financial transparency became major topics of controversy. Trump drew criticism after repeatedly refusing to release his tax returns, stating they were under audit by the IRS. Unlike previous presidential candidates, he chose not to release his tax returns during the election, marking the first time since Richard Nixon in 1972 that a major party candidate withheld such information before a presidential election. After Democrats regained control of the House in 2018, pressure mounted again for Trump to release his tax returns. In April 2019, Congressman Richard Neal, chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, requested 6 years of Trump's personal and business tax returns from the IRS. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, however, rejected both Neal's request and his subsequent subpoena for the documents. Meanwhile, in May, the New York State Assembly passed legislation allowing tax officials to release the president's state tax returns to select congressional committees, provided the request served a specified and legitimate legislative purpose. With New York as the home base for the Trump Organization, it was believed the state returns could offer similar insights to Trump's federal returns. Then, in September 2019, Manhattan District Attorney Cyrus Vance Jr. subpoenaed the accounting firm Mazars USA for Trump's personal and corporate tax returns dating back to 2011. Trump's legal team challenged the subpoena, but a Manhattan federal district judge dismissed the lawsuit in October. The U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit temporarily delayed the enforcement of the subpoena, but soon after it rejected Trump's attempt to block a separate subpoena issued by the House Committee on Oversight and Reform. In December 2019, the U.S. Supreme Court agreed to hear arguments on whether Trump could block the release of his financial information to congressional committees and the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, and the cases were brought before the court the following May. In September 2020, the New York Times reported that Trump paid just $750 in federal income taxes in both 2016 and 2017, and that he paid no federal income tax in 10 of the previous 15 years. A lawyer for the Trump Organization countered, stating that most, if not all, of the facts in the Times report appeared to be inaccurate. In 1973, the federal government filed a complaint against Donald Trump, his father Fred Trump, and their company, alleging they had discriminated against tenants and potential tenants based on race. This was a violation of the Fair Housing Act, part of the Civil Rights Act of 1968. After a lengthy legal battle, the case was settled in 1975. As part of the agreement, the Trump company agreed to train its employees on the Fair Housing Act and to inform the community about its fair housing practices. In his 1987 memoir, The Art of the Deal, Trump wrote about the case's resolution, stating, "In the end, the government couldn't prove its case, and we ended up taking a minor settlement without admitting any guilt." In 2005, Donald Trump launched a for-profit venture called Trump University, offering courses in real estate and wealth management. Almost from the start, Trump University faced scrutiny, and by the time of Trump's 2015 presidential campaign, it was the subject of several lawsuits. In these cases, claimants accused Trump of fraud, false advertising, advertising and breach of contract. The controversy intensified when Trump suggested that U.S. District Court Judge Gonzalo Curiel, who was overseeing two class action cases, could not be impartial due to his Mexican heritage. On November 18, 2016, Trump, who had previously vowed to fight the lawsuits in court, agreed to settle three of them for $25 million without admitting any liability. New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman, in a statement, called the settlement a stunning reversal by Trump and a major victory for the over 6,000 victims of his fraudulent university. Later, in a separate incident tied to Trump University, it was reported that Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi chose not to join the existing New York fraud lawsuit against the venture. This decision came just days after Bondi received a substantial campaign donation from the Donald J. Trump Foundation, a private charity founded in 1988 to support non-profit causes. In November 2016, Bondi's name appeared on Trump's shortlist for potential U.S. Attorney General candidates. The campaign donation was later deemed improper, resulting in Trump having to pay a penalty to the IRS. The Trump Foundation itself then came under scrutiny for allegedly using its funds for non-charitable activities. Tax records revealed that since 2008, the foundation had received no charitable contributions from Trump himself, with all donations since that time coming from outside contributors. In the fall of 2019, after Trump admitted to using money from his foundation to promote his presidential campaign and settle personal debts, he was ordered to pay $2 million in damages, and the foundation was forced to close its doors. Donald Trump is currently registered as a Republican, but over the past 3 decades he has switched party affiliations multiple times. In 1987, he registered as a Republican, only to switch to independent in 1989. In 2000, Trump made his first run for president on the Reform Party platform. By 2001, he had registered as a Democrat. In 2009, he returned to the Republican Party, although in 2011 he briefly registered as an independent, leaving open the possibility of a presidential run in 2012. Ultimately, he endorsed Republican Mitt Romney's campaign in 2012 and has remained a Republican ever since. Trump became the official Republican nominee for president in the 2016 election, facing off against Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton. Defying polls and media projections, Trump won the majority of Electoral College votes in a surprising victory on November 8, 2016. Although he lost the popular vote to Clinton by nearly 2.9 million votes, Trump's 306 Electoral College votes to Clinton's 232 secured his position as the 45th president of the United States. Trump's win followed one of the most contentious presidential races in U.S. history, with many seeing his rise to the presidency as a rejection of establishment politics, especially among blue-collar and working-class Americans. In his victory speech, Trump pledged to be president for all Americans. Speaking of his supporters, he said, "As I've said from the beginning, ours was not a campaign, but rather an incredible and great movement, made up of millions of hard-working men and women who love their country and want a better, brighter future for themselves and for their families." On July 21, 2016, Donald Trump accepted the Republican presidential nomination at the National Convention in Cleveland. In his acceptance speech, he outlined the key issues he planned to address as president, focusing on violence in America, the economy, immigration, trade, terrorism, and the appointment of Supreme Court justices. On immigration, Trump declared, "We are going to build a great border wall to stop illegal immigration, to stop the gangs and the violence, and to stop the drugs from pouring into our communities." Trump also promised his supporters that he would renegotiate trade deals, reduce taxes and government regulations, repeal the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, defend Second Amendment gun rights, and rebuild our depleted military. He emphasized that he would ask countries receiving U.S. protection to pay their fair share. On January 20, 2017, Donald Trump was sworn in as the 45th President of the United States. Chief Justice John Roberts administered the oath of office, with Trump placing his hand on 2 Bibles, one used at Abraham Lincoln's inauguration, and his own family Bible, given to him by his mother in 1955 when he graduated from Sunday school at his family's Presbyterian church. In his inaugural address, Trump delivered a populist message, pledging to put the American people above political divisions. What truly matters is not which party controls our government, but whether our government is controlled by the people, he declared. January 20th, 2017 will be remembered as the day the people became the rulers of this nation again. Trump then painted a stark picture of the challenges facing America, highlighting families trapped in poverty, an education system he described as ineffective, and the impact of crime, drugs, and gangs. This American carnage stops right here and stops right now, he vowed. The day following Trump's inauguration, millions of protesters gathered across the United States and around the world. The Women's March on Washington drew over 500,000 people, protesting Trump's stance on a wide range of issues, from immigration to environmental protection. Later that evening, Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump attended the Liberty Inaugural Ball, where they shared a dance to mark the beginning of his term in office. The first 100 days of Donald Trump's presidency, from January 20th, 2017 to April 29th, 2017, were marked by a series of swift executive actions aimed at fulfilling his campaign promises and rolling back policies established by the Obama administration. Early on, Trump issued executive orders that set key aspects of his agenda in motion. These included his first Supreme Court nomination, initial steps toward constructing a wall on the Mexican border, a travel ban targeting several predominantly Muslim countries, moves to begin dismantling the Affordable Care Act, and the withdrawal of the U.S. from the Paris Climate Agreement. Additionally, Trump signed orders to implement a federal hiring freeze, withdraw from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and reinstate the Mexico City policy, which bans federal funding for non-governmental organizations abroad that promote or perform abortions. He also took steps to scale back financial regulation under the Dodd-Frank Act, enacted after the 2008 financial crisis. In an effort to curb lobbying, he called for a lifetime foreign lobbying ban for members of his administration, along with a 5-year ban on all other lobbying activities. On March 16, 2017, Trump released his proposed budget, prioritizing increased funding for the military, Veterans Affairs, and national security, including resources for building the border wall with Mexico. The proposed budget also introduced sweeping cuts to several government agencies. It aimed to significantly reduce funding for the Environmental Protection Agency, the State Department, and even eliminate funding for the National Endowment for the Arts, the National Endowment for the Humanities, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and the Community Development Block Grant Program, which helps fund Meals on Wheels. These proposed cuts proved controversial, and much of the funding was eventually restored. Donald Trump nominated 3 Supreme Court justices during his presidency: Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett. On January 31, 2017, Trump announced the nomination of Judge Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court. Gorsuch, then 49, was a conservative judge who had been appointed by President George W. Bush to the United States Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit in Denver. Educated at Columbia, Harvard, and Oxford, Gorsuch had clerked for Justices Byron White and Anthony Kennedy. His nomination followed a contentious period after Senate Republicans blocked President Obama's nominee, Merrick Garland, from receiving a confirmation hearing to replace the late Justice Antonin Scalia. Gorsuch's legal philosophy was considered similar to Scalia's, drawing strong praise from conservatives. Trump, addressing his supporters, remarked, "Millions of voters said this was the single most important issue for them when they voted for me for president. I am a man of my word. Today, I am keeping another promise to the American people by nominating Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court." Gorsuch then appeared for 3 days of testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee in March. On April 6th, the Senate convened to advance his nomination, but with Democrats holding firm, they denied the 60 votes required to proceed, resulting in the first successful partisan filibuster of a Supreme Court nominee. In response, Senate Republicans took a historic step by invoking the nuclear option, lowering the threshold for Supreme Court nominations from 60 votes to a simple majority of 50. On April 7th, Gorsuch was confirmed by the Senate, becoming the 113th Justice of the Supreme Court. On July 9, 2018, Donald Trump nominated Judge Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court following the retirement of Justice Anthony Kennedy. Known as a textualist and originalist, Kavanaugh's nomination marked another step in the rightward shift of the court. Democrats vowed to fight the nomination, and the process nearly came to a halt when Kavanaugh faced allegations of sexual assault. However, he was ultimately confirmed in a close vote that October. Following the death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Trump nominated conservative Judge Amy Coney Barrett of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit on September 26, 2020, on climate change. During his 2016 presidential campaign, Trump referred to climate change as a hoax. He later revised his stance slightly, saying, "I don't think it's a hoax. I think there's probably a difference." However, in an October 2018 interview on Fox News, he suggested that climate scientists had a political agenda and stated he was unconvinced that humans were primarily responsible for rising global temperatures. In November 2018, the fourth National Climate Assessment, compiled by 13 federal agencies including the EPA and Department of Energy, warned that unchecked climate change could have devastating impacts on the U.S. economy. When asked about the report, Trump responded, "I don't believe it." In June 2019, Trump discussed climate change with Prince Charles during a visit to the UK. In an interview with British TV host Piers Morgan, Trump stated, "I believe there is a change in weather, and I think it changes both ways." He argued that climate terminology had evolved, saying, "It used to be called global warming, then it was called climate change, and now actually it's called extreme weather." Later, on ITV's Good Morning Britain, Trump shared that he pushed back on Prince Charles's suggestions for stronger U.S. action on climate change, asserting that the United States now has among the cleanest climates there are based on all statistics. Paris Climate Agreement. On June 1, 2017, Trump announced the U.S. withdrawal from the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement, which President Obama had signed alongside 195 other nations. The accord aimed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions globally and fund research into alternative energy. Trump's decision, the United States joined Syria and Nicaragua as the only nations to reject the accord. However, Nicaragua later reversed its stance and joined the agreement. Pipelines. Soon after taking office, Trump revived the Keystone XL and Dakota Access pipelines, intended to transport oil extracted from Canada and North Dakota. The projects had been halted by President Obama, following widespread protests from environmental and Native American groups. Trump had owned shares in Energy Transfer Partners, the company responsible for the Dakota Access pipeline, but sold his stake in December 2016. Energy Transfer Partners CEO Kelsey Warren was also a contributor to Trump's presidential campaign, raising concerns about potential conflicts of interest. On March 28, 2017, President Trump, surrounded by American coal miners, signed the Energy Independence Executive Order. This order directed the Environmental Protection Agency to roll back Obama's Clean Power Plan, curtail climate and carbon emissions regulations, and lift a moratorium on coal mining on federal lands. Endangered Species Act. In August 2019, the Trump administration announced significant changes to the Endangered Species Act. The revisions gave the government greater discretion over factors such as climate change and economic costs when deciding whether to protect certain species. Healthcare. One of Trump's first actions in office was to sign an executive order directing federal agencies to waive, defer, grant exemptions from, or delay portions of the Affordable Care Act, or ACA, aiming to ease financial burdens on states, insurers, and individuals. On March 7, 2017, House Republicans, led by Speaker Paul Ryan, introduced the American Health Care Act, a plan to repeal and replace the ACA. However, due to insufficient support within their party, the bill was withdrawn just a few weeks later, marking a legislative setback for both Speaker Ryan and Trump. After further negotiations, a revised Republican health care plan passed narrowly in the House on May 4, 2017, with a 217 to 213 vote, sending it to the Senate. Upon its release, the Senate version faced opposition from both conservative and moderate senators. On June 27th, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell postponed a planned vote, and when a final skinny repeal bill went to the Senate floor on July 28th, it failed by just 3 votes. In September, Senators Lindsey Graham and Bill Cassidy introduced a new bill to repeal the ACA. However, Senate Republicans announced on September 26 they would not move forward with the bill due to lack of support. Frustrated, Trump commented, "We are disappointed in certain so-called Republicans." On October 12, 2017, Trump signed an executive order expanding health insurance options to include less comprehensive plans for small employer associations and short-term medical coverage, a move intended to circumvent Congress's approval. He also announced the elimination of cost-sharing reduction payments, or subsidies, which reduced deductibles for low-income Americans. These subsidies were expected to cost $9 billion in 2018 and an estimated $100 billion over the next decade. Birth control mandate. On October 6, 2017, the Trump administration announced a rollback of the birth control mandate established under the Affordable Care Act. The original mandate required insurers to cover contraception at no cost as a preventive service. For years, conservative and religious groups had challenged this provision in court. Under the new rule, any employer could claim an exemption from covering contraception services based on sincerely held religious beliefs or moral convictions. This change aligned with Trump's campaign promise to protect religious groups from what he described as bullying by the federal government. Critics argued that this rollback could affect hundreds of thousands of women, potentially limiting access to affordable contraception, which they noted helps prevent unintended pregnancies and saves lives. Abortion. As president, Trump has described himself as strongly pro-life, advocating for a ban on all abortions, except in cases of rape, incest, or when the mother's life is at risk. He has expressed support for bans on abortions after 20 weeks of pregnancy, pointing to his appointments of conservative justices Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh as part of a broader effort to make abortion laws more restrictive in some states. Trump's stance on abortion shifted over time. Initially pro-choice, he changed to an anti-abortion position in 1999. During his 2016 campaign, he caused controversy by suggesting some form of punishment for women who undergo abortions, but later clarified that he believed only practitioners should be penalized, not the women themselves. In January 2020, after his administration threatened to cut federal funding to California over a mandate requiring state health insurance plans to cover abortion, Trump became the first sitting president to address the annual March for Life rally in Washington, D.C. with tax plan. On April 26, 2017, President Trump announced his tax reform plan in a one-page outline, proposing sweeping changes to the U.S. tax code. The plan aimed to streamline the tax system by reducing the existing 7 income tax brackets down to 3, 10, 25, and 35%. However, this initial outline did not specify which income ranges would fall under each bracket. The plan also proposed lowering the corporate tax rate from 35 to 15%, eliminating both the alternative minimum tax and the estate tax, and simplifying the tax filing process. It did not, however, address concerns over how these tax cuts might impact federal revenue or increase the national debt. On December 2, 2017, Trump achieved his first major legislative victory when the Senate passed a comprehensive tax reform bill. Approved along party lines in a 51-49 vote, the bill drew criticism for extensive last-minute revisions, with frustrated Democrats sharing images of pages filled with crossed-out text and handwritten notes in the margins. Among its key measures, the Senate bill called for a reduction of the corporate tax rate from 35 to 20%, a doubling of personal deductions, and the end of the Obamacare individual mandate. Additionally, it included a provision allowing unborn children to be named as beneficiaries of college savings accounts, which critics claimed was a symbolic gesture toward the pro-life movement. Despite the Congressional Budget Office's estimate that the bill would cost $1.5 trillion over a decade, GOP senators argued that economic growth would offset this cost. Following the bill's Senate passage, Trump tweeted, "Biggest tax bill and tax cuts in history, just passed in the Senate. Now these great Republicans will be going for final passage." On December 20, 2017, the final tax bill passed both chambers of Congress. In early 2018, partisan conflicts over a spending bill led to a brief government shutdown. After further debate, Trump threatened a last-minute veto of a $1.3 trillion spending bill, reportedly frustrated that it did not fully fund his proposed wall along the Mexican border. However, he ultimately signed the bill into law on March 23, hours before another shutdown was set to begin. Transgender rights. On February 22, 2017, the Trump administration reversed federal protections for transgender students, allowing states and school districts to determine bathroom policies based on their interpretation of anti-discrimination laws. On March 27, 2017, Trump signed several measures under the Congressional Review Act, reversing regulations on education, land use, and a rule requiring federal contractors to disclose labor law violations. Later that year, Trump tweeted that he would ban transgender individuals from serving in the military. The policy, effective the following March, stated that transgender persons with a history or diagnosis of gender dysphoria, who may require substantial medical treatment, are disqualified from military service, except under limited circumstances. The Supreme Court allowed the policy to take effect in January 2019, though lower courts continued to hear related arguments. Gun control. Trump has consistently voiced support for the Second Amendment. In 2019, he attended the NRA's annual convention and vowed to veto a House-passed measure to strengthen background checks. However, following mass shootings, he at times expressed openness to reform. After the 2017 Las Vegas shooting, Trump banned bump stocks. In February 2018, the Parkland school shooting sparked a more vocal response. Trump ordered a ban on bump stocks and floated ideas for stronger background checks, raising the rifle buying age, and even arming teachers. In a February 28, 2018, meeting with lawmakers, Trump proposed expanding background checks and allowing authorities to confiscate firearms from dangerous individuals before going to court, saying, "Take the guns first, go through due process second." In June 2019, Trump said he would think about banning gun silencers. Following back-to-back mass shootings in El Paso and Dayton in August, he suggested linking background check legislation with immigration reform. Border wall. One of Trump's key campaign promises was the construction of a border wall between the United States and Mexico. Early in his presidency, he signed an executive order to begin building the wall, initially funded by U.S. taxpayers with the expectation of Mexican reimbursement. Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto, however, refused, and tensions led to the cancellation of a planned meeting between the two leaders. With neither Mexico nor Congress providing full funding, Trump announced in April 2018 that National Guard troops would be sent to the border, citing horrible, unsafe laws. In December 2018, with Congress refusing his request for $5.7 billion in wall funding, Trump declared he would not sign a government funding bill without the allocation, resulting in a record 35-day partial government shutdown. On February 14, 2019, Congress passed a spending bill providing $1.375 billion for 55 miles of steel post fencing. The following day, Trump declared a national emergency, allowing him to redirect $3.6 billion from military construction funds toward the wall. 16 states soon filed a lawsuit challenging his authority to bypass Congress. Trump issued his first presidential veto in response to a bipartisan resolution opposing the emergency declaration. In late July 2019, the Supreme Court ruled that the administration could begin using Pentagon funds for wall construction, while litigation continued. Border separation policy. In 2018, as part of its efforts to secure the U.S.-Mexico border, the Trump administration implemented a zero-tolerance policy aimed at prosecuting anyone crossing the border illegally. Because children couldn't legally be detained with their parents, this policy led to family separations as cases moved through immigration courts. A public outcry erupted when reports revealed that nearly 2,000 children had been separated from their parents over a 6-week period ending in May 2018, and images of young children crying in cages intensified the backlash. Trump initially deflected responsibility, blaming previous administrations and Democrats for the situation. The Democrats are forcing the breakup of families at the border with their horrible and cruel legislative agenda, he tweeted. Facing mounting pressure, Trump eventually signed an executive order on June 20th, directing the Department of Homeland Security to keep families together during immigration proceedings. meetings. I didn't like the sight or the feeling of families being separated, he explained, while reiterating the importance of zero tolerance for illegal border crossings and urging Congress to find a long-term solution. In the meantime, the Department of Homeland Security revived the catch-and-release system, temporarily allowing families to remain together while addressing the logistics of reuniting those who had already been separated. Travel ban. On January 27, 2017, President Trump signed one of his most controversial executive orders, calling for extreme vetting to keep what he termed radical Islamic terrorists out of the United States. The order immediately barred entry for refugees and immigrants from 7 predominantly Muslim countries, resulting in detentions at U.S. airports. The ban applied to citizens of Iraq, Syria, Iran, Sudan, Libya, Somalia, and Yemen for 90 days, temporarily halted the entry of all refugees for 120 days, and barred Syrian refugees indefinitely. In an interview, Trump stated that Christian refugees would receive priority under the new policy. After facing significant legal challenges, Trump signed a revised order on March 6, 2017. The revised ban removed Iraq from the list, applied a 90-day ban on travelers from the remaining 6 countries, reduced the Syrian refugee ban to 120 days, and removed religious preference for minorities. On March 15th, just hours before the revised order was set to take effect, Judge Derek Watson of Hawaii issued a nationwide restraining order, stating that the executive order did not demonstrate that a travel ban would effectively prevent terrorism and that it appeared to target a specific religion. Trump responded by calling it an unprecedented judicial overreach. The ban faced further setbacks, with Judge Theodore D. Chuang of Maryland blocking it the following day, followed by rulings from the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit in Virginia and the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. However, on June 26, 2017, the Supreme Court partially reinstated the ban, allowing it to take effect for foreign nationals without a bona fide relationship to someone or an entity in the U.S., while scheduling a hearing for October. On September 24, 2017, Trump issued a new proclamation, permanently restricting entry for most citizens from several countries: Iran, Libya, Syria, Yemen, Somalia, Chad, North Korea, and specific government officials from Venezuela. Critics continue to argue that the ban was biased against Muslims, pointing out that North Korea and Venezuela were only nominal additions. On October 17th, Judge Watson again blocked the latest version of the ban, asserting that it was a poor fit for the issues Trump had cited. But on December 4, 2017, the Supreme Court allowed the third version of the travel ban to take effect despite ongoing legal challenges, urging appeals courts to expedite decisions on its legality. This allowed the administration to fully enforce its restrictions on travel from 8 nations, 6 of them predominantly Muslim. Finally, on June 26, 2018, the Supreme Court upheld the president's travel ban by a narrow 5-4 vote. Writing for the majority, Chief Justice John Roberts asserted that Trump held executive authority to make national security judgments in immigration. In dissent, Justice Sonia Sotomayor compared the decision to Korematsu versus United States, the case that permitted Japanese-American internment during World War II. Public Charge Rule. In August 2019, the Trump administration introduced the Public Charge Rule, a regulation aimed at limiting access to permanent residency for immigrants likely to rely on government assistance. This policy targeted legal immigrants who depend on programs like Medicaid, food stamps, and other benefits. It tightened residency requirements, focusing on factors such as an immigrant's education, assets, resources, and overall financial status in Trump and North Korea. In early August 2017, intelligence experts confirmed that North Korea had successfully developed a miniaturized nuclear warhead capable of fitting inside its missiles, bringing the nation closer to becoming a nuclear power. Around the same time, North Korea announced that it was examining the operational plan to strike areas near the U.S. territory of Guam with medium to long-range ballistic missiles. U.S. experts estimated North Korea's nuclear arsenal at approximately 60 warheads, and there were concerns that the country would soon have an intercontinental ballistic missile, ICBM, capable of reaching the United States. In response, Trump warned that North Korea would face fire and fury if it continued with its threats, adding that the U.S. military was locked and loaded. On August 15th, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un commented that he would watch a little more the foolish and stupid conduct of the Yankees. Trump tweeted that Kim's decision was a very wise and well-reasoned decision. However, on August 20th, North Korea warned that the U.S. risked an uncontrollable phase of nuclear war by conducting joint military exercises with South Korea. On August 28th, North Korea launched a missile over Japan. Trump responded the following day, stating, "All options are on the table." Then, at the United Nations General Assembly on September 19th, Trump called Kim Jong-un rocketman and threatened to totally destroy North Korea if it endangered the United States or its allies. Hours before, the UN had voted to enact additional sanctions against North Korea. 2 days later, Trump widened U.S. economic sanctions on North Korea. Shortly after, North Korea threatened to shoot down American planes, interpreting Trump's comments as a declaration of war. Despite the mounting tensions, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson revealed that the U.S. and North Korea were in direct communication and seeking a non-militarized resolution. On October 20th, CIA Director Mike Pompeo warned that North Korea was in the final step of achieving the capability to strike the U.S. mainland with nuclear warheads, suggesting that the U.S. should be prepared to respond accordingly. Foreign policy experts voiced concerns that conflict between the U.S. and North Korea was becoming a very real possibility. Summits with Kim Jong-un following the 2018 Winter Olympics in Pyeongchang, where North Korea displayed a rare moment of unity with host nation South Korea. North Korean officials expressed interest in opening communications with the United States. Trump seized the opportunity, announcing that he was willing to meet with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. On June 12, 2018, Trump and Kim held their historic meeting at the Capella Resort in Singapore, marking the first time a sitting U.S. president met with a North Korean leader. The two initially held private talks with their interpreters, later expanding the meeting to include top officials, including Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, National Security Advisor John Bolton, and White House Chief of Staff John Kelly. In a televised ceremony afterward, the leaders signed a joint statement. Trump committed to providing security guarantees to North Korea, while Kim reaffirmed his commitment to the complete denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. Although the talks were seen as an early step in what could be a long diplomatic process, Trump expressed optimism, stating that denuclearization on the peninsula would begin very quickly. "We're very proud of what took place today," Trump said. "I think our whole relationship with North Korea and the Korean peninsula is going to be a very much different situation than it has in the past." The two leaders met again on February 27, 2019, at the Metropole Hotel in Hanoi, Vietnam, to discuss the next steps in denuclearization. Trump told Kim, "I think you will have a tremendous future with your country. A great leader, and I look forward to watching it happen and helping it to happen." However, negotiations ended abruptly on the second day. North Korea reportedly asked for sanctions relief in exchange for dismantling its main nuclear facility, but was unwilling to abandon all elements of its weapons program. Reflecting on the outcome, Trump said, "Sometimes you have to walk," while noting that discussions concluded on good terms. On June 30, 2019, Trump made history as the first sitting U.S. president to set foot in North Korea. He met with Kim at the Demilitarized Zone, DMZ, on the Korean peninsula for informal discussions. Trump later stated that they agreed to appoint negotiators to resume denuclearization talks in the coming weeks. Trump and Russia, Russian hacking in the 2016 election. Throughout the 2016 presidential campaign, Trump repeatedly denied any connection to Russian President Vladimir Putin or involvement in the hacking of Democratic National Committee, DNC, emails. In January 2017, a U.S. intelligence report prepared by the CIA, FBI, and NSA concluded that Putin had indeed ordered a campaign to influence the U.S. election. The report stated, Russia's goals were to undermine public faith in the U.S. democratic process, denigrate Secretary Clinton, and harm her electability and potential presidency. We further assess that Putin and the Russian government developed a clear preference for President-elect Trump. Before the report's release, Trump expressed skepticism about Russian interference and questioned the findings of the intelligence community. He received a classified briefing on the issue, and during his first press conference as President-elect on January 11th, Trump acknowledged that Russia had interfered in the election. Yet in subsequent remarks, Trump continued to avoid directly condemning Russia, often noting that he believed Putin's denials of involvement. In March 2018, the Trump administration formally acknowledged Russian interference by issuing sanctions against 19 Russians accused of meddling in the 2016 election and conducting cyber attacks. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin made the announcement, though Trump himself remained silent on the issue. In July 2018, just days before Trump's scheduled meeting with Putin in Helsinki, Finland, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein announced additional charges against 12 Russian intelligence officers for hacking the DNC and the Clinton campaign. Meeting with Putin. On July 16, 2018, the White House arranged for President Trump to hold his first formal meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Helsinki, Finland. The meeting came soon after Trump's contentious summit with NATO leaders and following the Justice Department's indictment of 12 Russian operatives accused of meddling in the 2016 U.S. election. During a joint press conference, Trump was asked directly about election interference. Instead of pointing to Putin, Trump responded, "I think we've all been foolish. I think we're all to blame," and added, "President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today." Back in the U.S., Trump's remarks sparked intense backlash from both sides of the aisle. Many Republicans joined Democrats in criticizing the president's perceived defense of Putin over his own intelligence agencies. Senator John McCain described it as one of the most disgraceful performances by an American president in memory, while Newt Gingrich, a frequent Trump ally, tweeted, "It is the most serious mistake of his presidency and must be corrected immediately." After returning to the White House, Trump attempted to quell the controversy, claiming that he had misspoken and that he had always accepted U.S. intelligence findings on Russian interference. Yet he still hinted that other parties could have been involved. Around the same time, news broke that Trump had instructed National Security Advisor John Bolton to invite Putin to the White House that autumn. The announcement caught U.S. intelligence officials by surprise, including Director of National Intelligence Dan Coats. Bolton later disclosed that the invitation would be postponed until the conclusion of the special counsel investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election. Russian sanctions. Despite Trump's attempts at diplomacy with Putin, his administration announced in February 2019 that the U.S. would suspend the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces INF treaty with Russia, citing repeated violations by Russia. The suspension gave Russia 180 days to comply before the U.S. would officially withdraw from the treaty. Syria. On April 6, 2017, President Trump ordered a military strike on a Syrian government airfield in response to a chemical attack by Syrian President Bashar al-Assad on civilians, which had caused the deaths of dozens of men, women, and children. The strike marked a departure from Trump's earlier stance, when he had opposed similar actions by President Obama. 2 Navy destroyers launched 59 Tomahawk missiles at Shayrat Airfield, the base from which the chemical attack was believed to have originated. This strike represented the first direct U.S. military action against Syrian military forces during the country's civil war. 1 year later, reports emerged of another chemical attack in Syria, this time in the rebel-held city of Douma, with dozens reportedly killed. Though Syria and its ally, Russia, dismissed the incident as a hoax by terrorists, Trump responded forcefully, tweeting, "Russia vows to shoot down any and all missiles fired at Syria. Get ready, Russia, because they will be coming. You shouldn't be partners with a gas-killing animal who kills his people and enjoys it." In the early hours of April 14, 2018, the U.S., Britain, and France launched coordinated strikes on Syria, targeting 2 chemical weapons facilities and a research center. After the operation, Trump thanked his military allies on Twitter, declaring, "Mission accomplished." In December 2018, Trump announced that U.S. troops would be pulled from Syria. However, he later reconsidered after critics argued the decision would primarily benefit Assad and his ally, Russia. Then, in October 2019, Trump ordered U.S. troops withdrawn from northeast Syria to clear the way for a Turkish military operation, raising concerns over the safety of American-backed Kurdish forces in the region. Responding to criticism, Trump stated that it was time for the U.S. to leave Syria and let regional countries figure the situation out. He warned Turkey that any actions off-limits would be met with forceful response. Shortly afterward, Trump announced sanctions on Turkey, condemning their military offensive as a threat to civilians and peace, security, and stability in the region. Death of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. In late October 2019, President Trump announced the death of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the leader of the Islamic State, following a high-stakes American commando raid in Syria. According to Trump, al-Baghdadi was cornered by U.S. forces and chased to the end of an underground tunnel, where he detonated a suicide vest, reportedly whimpering and crying and screaming all the way. The successful raid came amidst ongoing controversy over Trump's decision to withdraw American troops from the region. Critics noted that the mission's success was largely supported by intelligence contributions from Kurdish allies, as well as the continued presence of American forces in nearby areas. Trade war. On March 1, 2018, following a Commerce Department investigation, President Trump announced a sweeping decision to impose tariffs of 25% on steel imports and 10% on aluminum, while he initially granted temporary exemptions as leverage for renegotiating trade deals. These actions led to new agreements with South Korea and several South American countries, limiting their metal exports to the U.S. Talks with major players like China, the European Union, and neighboring countries stalled, and by late May, the administration moved forward with all tariffs. The decision triggered strong reactions from key U.S. trading partners. In response, the European Union, Canada, and Mexico imposed retaliatory tariffs. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau condemned Trump's unacceptable actions, while French President Emmanuel Macron warned of isolating the U.S. from the Group of Seven. The backlash set a tense stage for Trump's attendance at the G7 summit in Quebec in June, where he encountered a frosty reception from allies. Trump left the G7 summit early, making headlines by declaring he would not sign a joint communique among the 7 nations and openly criticizing Trudeau on Twitter. A month later, at the NATO summit in Brussels, Belgium, Trump again made sharp comments about allied countries, including an accusation that Germany was captive to Russia due to its reliance on Russian natural gas. He also criticized UK Prime Minister Theresa May for her approach to Brexit. Back in the US, Trump attempted to offset the potential economic fallout of the trade war by announcing up to $12 billion in emergency relief funds for American farmers. The following summer, the administration introduced another aid package of $16 billion to support farmers facing financial losses. China. In April 2018, the Trump administration introduced a 25% tariff on over 1,000 Chinese products, aiming to penalize China for its trade practices. Trump granted temporary exemptions to allow for negotiations, but proceeded with a tax on $34 billion worth of Chinese goods by July. The trade war escalated in May 2019 when Trump raised tariffs to 25% on $200 billion of Chinese goods as both countries tried to negotiate a trade deal. After securing expanded border security measures from Mexico using tariff threats, Trump turned his focus back to China, suggesting another $300 billion of Chinese goods could be taxed if talks stalled. In August, he imposed a 5% increase, followed by another scheduled hike in October, which he eventually delayed as he continued negotiations. In October, Trump announced a very substantial Phase 1 deal with China, covering intellectual property, financial services, and agriculture, finalized in January 2020. This agreement committed China to purchase an additional $200 billion in U.S. products over 2 years, and promised to curb currency manipulation and intellectual property theft. Taiwan. In June 2019, Trump approved a $2 billion arms sale to Taiwan, one of the largest sales in recent years. The move heightened tensions with China, which views Taiwan as a breakaway province. While the U.S. doesn't officially recognize Taiwan, it is a key counterbalance to China in the region. In 2018, the Pentagon began ordering U.S. naval ships to sail through the Taiwan Strait, underscoring American military presence and support for Taiwan despite objections from Beijing. Israel and the recognition of Jerusalem. On December 6, 2017, Trump declared U.S. recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital and announced plans to move the American embassy from Tel Aviv. The decision broke with decades of U.S. neutrality in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Trump described it as a long overdue step to advance the peace process and stressed that it wouldn't impact any two-state solution proposals. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu praised the move, but American allies like France, Britain, and Germany viewed it as disruptive. Predominantly Muslim nations, including Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Egypt, condemned the decision, and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas declared that the U.S. could no longer mediate peace efforts. On December 21st, the UN General Assembly voted overwhelmingly, 128-9, to urge the U.S. to reverse its recognition of Jerusalem, with many allies voting in favor. After dispatching Vice President Mike Pence to reassure Arab leaders, Trump tried to rebuild alliances at the World Economic Forum in Davos in January 2018, meeting with Netanyahu and praising UK Prime Minister Theresa May. In November 2019, the Trump administration announced it would no longer consider Israeli settlements in the West Bank illegal under international law. Then, in December, Trump signed an executive order to combat anti-Semitism on college campuses, allowing the government to recognize Judaism as a race or nationality, enabling the Education Department to withhold funds from institutions accused of discriminatory practices against Jews. In January 2020, Trump unveiled his deal of the century for a two-state solution, envisioning Jerusalem as Israel's capital, with Palestinians having their capital in the eastern city. Israel would be authorized to annex West Bank settlements. The plan was rejected by Palestinian leaders, with Abbas calling it the slap of the century. In September 2020, Trump presided over the signing of accords between Israel, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates, in which both Arab nations normalized relations with Israel, marking a significant shift in Middle Eastern diplomacy. Iran. In May 2018, over the objections of European allies, Trump announced the U.S. withdrawal from the Iran nuclear deal, reinstating sanctions on Iran. Initially, Iran's response was restrained, but by July, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani warned that war with Iran is the mother of all wars, and cautioned Trump to not play with the lion's tail. Trump responded with a fiery, all-caps tweet directed at Rouhani, stating, "Never, ever threaten the United States again, or you will suffer consequences the likes of which few throughout history have ever suffered before. Be cautious." In April 2019, tensions rose again when the Trump administration ended economic exemptions for 5 countries buying oil from Iran, intensifying pressure on Iran. Subsequently, several oil tankers were attacked near the Strait of Hormuz, with the U.S. holding Iran responsible. In June, Iran shot down an American drone over disputed airspace. Trump later said he had been minutes from ordering a retaliatory strike, but opted for additional sanctions instead. Tensions peaked in December 2019, after an American civilian contractor was killed in a rocket attack on an Iraqi base. The U.S. retaliated with airstrikes against an Iranian-backed militia. When protesters later breached the outer wall of the U.S. Embassy in Iraq, Trump authorized a drone strike killing General Qasem Soleimani, Iran's top security commander, further escalating hostilities. Cuba and travel restrictions. In April 2019, Trump tightened travel restrictions to Cuba to pressure the Cuban government to reform and reduce its support for Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. In June, the State Department prohibited private and public ships and aircraft from visiting Cuba, ending people-to-people educational travel, a popular exemption for Americans. In September 2020, Trump announced further sanctions to curtail travel to Cuba, reversing Obama-era policies that had loosened restrictions. Charlottesville rally. On August 12, 2017, white nationalists gathered in Charlottesville, Virginia, for a Unite the Right rally to protest the removal of a statue of Confederate General Robert E. Lee. The event attracted Ku Klux Klan members and neo-Nazis, including former KKK leader David Duke, who said that protesters were going to fulfill the promises of Donald Trump to take our country back. The rally turned violent when counter-protesters arrived, leading to clashes. The situation escalated when a man, who had been seen marching with neo-Nazis earlier, drove a car into a crowd of counter-protesters, killing 32-year-old Heather Heyer and injuring at least 19 others. That day, Trump condemned hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides, without specifically denouncing the white nationalist groups. Following backlash, he delivered a stronger statement 2 days later saying, "Racism is evil, and those who cause violence in its name are criminals and thugs, including the KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other hate groups that are repugnant to everything we hold dear as Americans. However, in a press conference shortly after, Trump reiterated, "I think there is blame on both sides." In September, after meeting with Senator Tim Scott, Trump defended his comments again, suggesting that pretty bad dudes on both sides were responsible, mentioning Antifa as an example. Trump and Obama, birther controversy. Starting in 2011, Donald Trump publicly questioned whether President Barack Obama was born in the United States, fueling the birther movement. In April of that year, Obama released his birth certificate to confirm his birthplace as Hawaii, hoping to put the controversy to rest. Still, Trump remained a vocal critic of Obama, not only about his birthplace but on many of his policies. In 2013, Trump stirred further controversy by suggesting that the death of a Hawaiian state health director was somehow linked to a cover-up of Obama's birth certificate. As Trump gained traction as the Republican presidential nominee in 2016, he softened his stance, telling CNN, "I have my own theory on Obama. Someday I will write a book." Later that fall, amid pressure from his campaign advisors to appeal to minority voters, Trump stated, "President Barack Obama was born in the United States, period." However, he also deflected blame by suggesting that Hillary Clinton's campaign had initially promoted the birther theory, wiretapping allegations. On March 4, 2017, Trump posted a series of tweets alleging that former President Obama had wiretapped Trump Tower during the 2016 campaign. He offered no evidence to support his claims. FBI Director James Comey requested that the Justice Department refute Trump's accusation, while the White House urged Congress to investigate. On March 16th, bipartisan leaders from the Senate Intelligence Committee stated that there was no evidence supporting Trump's claim. Then on March 20th, Comey testified before Congress saying, "We have looked carefully inside the FBI, and we have no information that supports those tweets." During the same hearing, Comey confirmed that the FBI was investigating Russian interference in the 2016 election, examining possible links between individuals in Trump's campaign and the Russian government. Comey and Trump. On May 9, 2017, Trump abruptly fired James Comey, who was leading the investigation into potential collusion between Trump's campaign advisors and Russia. Trump stated that the decision was based on recommendations from Attorney General Jeff Sessions and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who criticized Comey's handling of the Clinton email investigation. Comey's firing sent shockwaves through Washington, with comparisons drawn to the 1973 Saturday Night Massacre, when President Nixon dismissed the special prosecutor investigating Watergate. Senate Minority Leader Charles Schumer voiced skepticism, stating, "Every American will rightly suspect that the decision to fire Director Comey was part of a cover-up." Days later, Trump told NBC's Lester Holt that his decision to fire Comey was not solely based on Sessions and Rosenstein's recommendations, saying, "Regardless of the recommendation, I was going to fire Comey." A week after Comey's dismissal, the New York Times reported that Trump had asked Comey to end the investigation into former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. According to a memo written by Comey, Trump allegedly said, "I hope you can see your way clear to letting this go. He is a good guy. I hope you can let this go." The White House denied the claim. On June 8, 2017, Comey testified before the Senate Intelligence Committee, where he accused Trump of lying about the reasons for his dismissal. Comey expressed his belief that he was fired in an attempt to influence the FBI's probe into Russian interference in the election. Mueller investigation of Donald Trump. On May 17, 2017, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein appointed Robert Mueller, a former FBI director, as special counsel to lead the investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election and potential ties to the Trump campaign. Nearly 2 years later, on March 24, 2019, Attorney General William Barr summarized Mueller's findings in a letter to Congress. Barr stated that Mueller found no evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. However, he noted Mueller's ambiguous language regarding obstruction of justice, stating, "While this report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it also does not exonerate him." Trump, however, declared complete exoneration and dismissed the investigation as an illegal takedown that failed. Indictments and cooperation. On October 30th, 2017, Mueller announced the first charges, indicting former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort and his associate Rick Gates on counts of tax fraud, money laundering, and foreign lobbying violations. In December, former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI and agreed to cooperate with Mueller's team. The interview issue and controversies. In January 2018, reports emerged that Mueller wanted to interview Trump regarding his dismissal of FBI Director James Comey and Michael Flynn. Trump initially expressed openness, saying he was looking forward to it, but the New York Times later reported that Trump had tried to fire Mueller the previous June, only backing off after the White House counsel protested. In early February, Trump allowed House Republicans to release a memo claiming the FBI and DOJ used information from a dossier funded by the Democratic Party to justify a wiretap on former Trump campaign associate Carter Page. House Democrats argued the memo omitted important context, portraying the FBI as biased against Trump to discredit its involvement in the Mueller investigation. In April, The Times published a list of 48 questions Mueller intended to ask Trump, covering topics from Trump's knowledge of a June 2016 Trump Tower meeting with Russians to his intentions behind certain tweets. Ultimately, Trump did not sit for an in-person interview with Mueller, submitting written responses instead. The Mueller Report. In March 2019, Mueller's report was officially released. While it found no evidence of collusion, it left open the question of obstruction of justice, using language that raised questions about Trump's actions and possible interference. The redacted report spurred further controversy, with critics suggesting that Barr's initial summary may have shielded Trump from congressional scrutiny. In May 2019, Trump invoked executive privilege to block the release of an unredacted version of Mueller's report. The House Judiciary Committee responded by voting to recommend that the House hold Barr in contempt of Congress for his refusal to release the full report. Trump and Stormy Daniels. Adult film star Stephanie Clifford, known by her stage name Stormy Daniels, reportedly signed a non-disclosure agreement shortly before the 2016 election to keep quiet about an alleged affair with Donald Trump. In early 2018, after the Wall Street Journal broke the story, Daniels' situation quickly became national news. During a much-publicized appearance on Jimmy Kimmel Live, she teased details but did not confirm the affair outright. In February 2018, Trump's personal attorney, Michael Cohen, admitted to paying Daniels $130,000 out of his own funds, though he didn't specify the purpose of the payment. The following month, Daniels challenged the non-disclosure agreement, claiming it was invalid because Trump hadn't personally signed it. In late March, Daniels gave a detailed interview to 60 Minutes, describing her alleged encounter with Trump and an incident in a parking lot where an unknown man allegedly warned her to keep quiet. The interview aired shortly after another former Trump mistress, Karen McDougal, spoke out, saying she had fallen in love with Trump during their time together. In early April, Trump made his first public comments on the matter while aboard Air Force One. When asked about the payment to Daniels, he claimed he was unaware of it, responding, "Michael's my attorney, and you'll have to ask Michael." Later that month, McDougal settled with American Media Inc., AMI, which had previously acquired exclusive rights to her story for the National Enquirer. Under the terms of the new agreement, McDougal was allowed to keep her $150,000 payment while regaining the freedom to discuss her experiences. Shortly after, Daniels filed a defamation lawsuit against Trump for dismissing a composite sketch of the man who allegedly confronted her as a con job. In her suit, Daniels argued that Trump had falsely accused her of lying, seeking more than $75,000 in damages. Michael Cohen investigation. In July 2018, Michael Cohen, Trump's former personal lawyer, came under investigation by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York. During the probe, Cohen released a secret recording from 2 years prior, capturing a conversation with Trump, discussing payments to American Media Inc. or AMI to keep Karen McDougal's story from surfacing, indicating Trump's awareness of the situation during his candidacy. The situation escalated in August when Cohen struck a plea deal, admitting guilt to 8 criminal charges, including 2 campaign finance violations. He testified that these violations were made at Trump's direction to issue hush payments, leading to significant scrutiny on the president's involvement. In December 2018, Cohen was sentenced to 3 years in prison. In February 2019, Cohen appeared before the House Oversight Committee in a televised hearing, presenting evidence and testimony on Trump's alleged infractions. Cohen claimed that Trump had prior knowledge of the 2016 Trump Tower meeting with Russian representatives, as well as the WikiLeaks release of DNC emails. As further proof, Cohen provided checks signed by Trump, which he said were reimbursements for the hush payment made to Stormy Daniels. Inaugural committee investigation. In February 2019, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York issued a subpoena to Trump's inaugural committee, requesting a range of documents. These included bank records, as well as the names of committee donors, vendors, and contractors. The investigation stemmed from earlier inquiries related to Michael Cohen, Trump's former personal lawyer, who had been under scrutiny for various financial dealings. Prosecutors were reportedly exploring possible crimes, including conspiracy to defraud the United States, making false statements, and money laundering, with a focus on how funds for Trump's inauguration had been raised and spent. Sexual assault and rape accusations. As of June 2019, a total of 16 women had accused Trump of sexual misconduct, which he has consistently denied. E. Jean Carroll allegations. In June 2019, New York journalist E. Jean Carroll alleged that Trump sexually assaulted her in 1996 at Bergdorf Goodman, an upscale Manhattan department store. According to Carroll, Trump approached her, asked for her help choosing a gift, and led her to the lingerie department. There, she claims, he pinned her in a dressing room and assaulted her. Carroll shared the incident with 2 friends shortly afterward, one advising her to go to the police, and the other recommending she stay silent. Carroll did not speak publicly about the alleged assault until 2019, when she recounted it in her memoir, What Do We Need Men For? Trump initially denied knowing Carroll, dismissing her accusation as a fabricated story intended to promote her book. When a photograph of the two surfaced, he insisted he had no idea who she is. Access Hollywood controversy. On October 7, 2016, The Washington Post released a 2005 recording in which Trump, speaking to Access Hollywood co-anchor Billy Bush, made lewd comments about women. Caught on a hot mic, Trump was heard saying, "You can do anything as a star. Grab 'em by the..." Following immediate backlash, Trump responded by calling it locker room banter and issued a videotaped apology saying, "I've said and done things I regret, and the words released today are one of them." Despite calls from top Republicans for him to withdraw from the race, Trump remained defiant, asserting he would stay in. Around the same time, several women came forward with allegations of sexual harassment or assault by Trump, pressuring Ukraine and whistleblower complaint. In September 2019, The Washington Post reported that Trump had withheld $400 million in military aid to Ukraine in July 2019. This news coincided with reports of a whistleblower complaint regarding Trump's communications with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, specifically a phone call urging him to investigate Hunter Biden, son of 2020 Democratic candidate Joe Biden. Trump admitted discussing the Bidens with Zelensky, releasing a transcript of their conversation but denying any link between the withheld aid and his request for an investigation. As House Democrats pursued testimony, reports surfaced of another individual with direct knowledge of the events, William B. Taylor Jr., the acting U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, and Alexander Vindman, the National Security Council's top Ukraine expert. Both provided testimony that supported claims of a quid pro quo, impeachment and acquittal. By the end of Mueller's investigation in March 2019, some Democrats, including 2020 presidential hopefuls Kamala Harris and Cory Booker, began calling for impeachment proceedings against Trump. The pressure increased after Mueller's May press conference, where he stated he could not exonerate Trump on obstruction of justice, but left it to Congress to decide whether to pursue impeachable actions. However, at that point, House Judiciary Chair Jerry Nadler and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi were hesitant to start impeachment proceedings. In July 2019, after Trump made controversial comments about 4 Congresswomen of color, Texas Democrat Al Green filed a resolution to begin impeachment. With most Democrats not yet prepared, the measure failed by a vote of 332-95. The turning point came with revelations that Trump had pressured Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to investigate Joe and Hunter Biden, and that the administration had tried to conceal a related whistleblower complaint. On September 24, 2019, Pelosi announced a formal impeachment inquiry. On October 31st, the House voted 232-196 to approve a resolution establishing impeachment procedures. All but 2 Democrats and 1 independent voted in favor, with Republicans unanimously opposed. Impeachment hearings began on November 13th, with testimony from acting U.S. Ambassador William Taylor and other officials. A week later, U.S. Ambassador to the European Union Gordon Sondland testified that there was indeed a quid pro quo arrangement, adding that Vice President Mike Pence and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo were aware of Trump's pressure campaign. On December 10, 2019, House Democrats introduced 2 articles of impeachment, charging Trump with abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. 8 days later, the House voted nearly along party lines to approve both articles, making Trump the 3rd U.S. president to be impeached. The Senate trial began on January 21, 2020, with House impeachment managers arguing that Trump's actions were an abuse of presidential power, while Trump's defense team maintained that his actions were within his authority. Despite former National Security Advisor John Bolton's unpublished book reportedly offering additional evidence, the Senate voted against allowing further witnesses on January 31st. The impeachment proceedings concluded on February 5, 2020, with the Senate voting mostly along party lines to acquit Trump on both charges. Mitt Romney, the senator from Utah, was the only Republican to vote to convict on the abuse of power charge, marking a historic moment in the proceedings. Coronavirus, following his acquittal in the impeachment trial, Trump faced a new challenge with the emergence of the novel coronavirus from China. Initially, the White House requested $2.5 billion in emergency funding, reflecting Trump's belief that the virus posed a limited threat, though lawmakers from both parties considered the amount insufficient. On February 26, 2020, as the U.S. recorded its 60th known COVID-19 case, Trump announced that Vice President Pence would lead the administration's response, stating, "We're very, very ready for this. The risk to the American people remains very low." However, in the weeks that followed, the situation quickly worsened. The World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a pandemic, and major American sports leagues suspended their seasons. On March 13th, after stocks took a record plunge, Trump declared a national emergency to unlock $50 billion in federal resources for pandemic response. On March 18th, Trump enacted the family's first Coronavirus Response Act, which provided paid sick leave, food assistance, expanded unemployment benefits, and free testing. He followed up by signing a $2 trillion relief bill on March 27th, which included a $500 billion government lending program and funds for hospitals and individual Americans. In April, Trump faced criticism for his response to the pandemic and announced on April 14th that he was suspending funding to the WHO, blaming the organization for severely mismanaging the crisis. The following week, he signed an executive order halting green card issuance for 60 days, with exceptions for medical workers and family members of U.S. citizens, aiming to protect American jobs during the pandemic. Throughout the summer, Trump sometimes clashed with Dr. Anthony Fauci, head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, who pushed back against Trump's calls for a quick reopening of the country. In May, after Fauci cautioned that some schools might not safely reopen in the fall, Trump dismissed that assessment as not an acceptable answer. On October 2, 2020, Trump announced that he and First Lady Melania had tested positive for COVID-19. Later that day, he was admitted to Walter Reed National Military Medical Center due to fatigue. He was discharged on October 5th. Weeks later, it was revealed that their son Barron had also tested positive after initially testing negative. Social media executive order. In May 2020, Trump faced backlash after retweeting conspiracy theories about Joe Scarborough and making claims that mail-in voting would lead to widespread fraud. Twitter responded by adding fact-checking links to some of his tweets, leading Trump to accuse the platform of censoring him. In response, he signed an executive order targeting Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, aiming to remove liability protections for social media companies like Twitter and Facebook, and cut federal funding for platforms accused of censorship. 2020 re-election campaign. On June 18, 2019, Trump kicked off his re-election campaign with a rally at the Amway Center in Orlando, Florida. In front of a packed crowd, he celebrated his economic record and condemned the witch hunt against him. unveiling the campaign slogan, "Keep America Great." He promised supporters, "We are going to keep on working, we are going to keep on fighting, and we are going to keep on winning, winning, winning." Presidential debates with Biden. The first presidential debate between Trump and Democratic challenger Joe Biden took place on September 29, 2020. Widely criticized for its chaotic nature, Trump frequently interrupted Biden and moderator Chris Wallace. Although he defended his Supreme Court nomination and stance on law and order, he was also criticized for a lukewarm denunciation of a far-right group and personal attacks on Biden's family. A second debate was canceled after Trump refused to participate in a virtual format. Instead, both candidates held town hall events on October 15th. The final debate on October 22nd featured muted microphones to reduce interruptions. Trump portrayed the pandemic as under control, defended his environmental record and foreign relations, and touted his achievements in criminal justice reform. He continued his attacks on the Biden family's business dealings, describing Biden as all talk and no action. 2020 election defeat. As Election Day approached, polls showed Trump trailing Biden, but early results looked promising, especially after he won Florida. However, Biden gained ground as mail-in ballots were counted in key states, and Trump began challenging the process with lawsuits in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Nevada, and Georgia. On November 7, 2020, Biden was declared the 46th president-elect after winning Pennsylvania, making Trump the first president to lose re-election since George H.W. Bush in 1992. Refusing to concede, Trump cited ongoing litigation and claimed the election was far from over. On December 14, 2020, the Electoral College formalized Biden's victory, with 306 votes to Trump's 232. Despite numerous failed lawsuits, Trump continued exploring options to overturn the results. On January 2, 2021, Trump urged Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger to find nearly 12,000 votes to change the state's outcome. Meanwhile, some House Republicans and senators planned to object to Biden's Electoral College certification on January 6th. Trump pressed Vice President Pence, as president of the Senate, to reject votes from contested states. Capitol siege, Twitter ban, and second impeachment. On January 6, 2021, Trump held a rally near the White House where he declared he would never concede and urged supporters to march to the Capitol. His supporters soon breached the Capitol, clashing with police and, at one point, taking over the Senate chamber, forcing lawmakers into evacuation. Amid the chaos, Trump tweeted, "These are the things and events that happen when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from great patriots who have been badly and unfairly treated for so long." He added, "Go home with love and in peace. Remember this day forever." By around 6 p.m., law enforcement had regained control of the Capitol. The violent disruption resulted in 4 deaths, numerous injuries, more than 50 arrests, and a public emergency declared by D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser. That night, Congress reconvened, working well into the early hours of January 7th as some members continued to voice objections to the election results. At around 3:40 a.m. on January 7th, Vice President Pence formally certified Biden as the winner of the election. With his social media accounts temporarily suspended, Trump issued a statement soon after, saying, "Even though I totally disagree with the outcome of the election, there will be an orderly transition on January 20th. Later that day, Trump posted a video on Twitter addressing the heinous attacks on the Capitol and acknowledging the election results, saying, "A new administration will be inaugurated on January 20th. My focus now turns to ensuring a smooth, orderly, and seamless transition of power. This moment calls for healing and reconciliation." Despite this statement, Trump tweeted that he would not attend Biden's inauguration. Twitter had temporarily suspended his account on January 6th, but on January 8th, Twitter permanently banned him from the platform, citing the risk of further incitement. Other social media platforms, including Facebook and Instagram, followed with similar actions. Second impeachment and acquittal. On January 13, 2021, the House of Representatives voted to impeach Trump for a second time on the charge of incitement of insurrection, making him the first president in U.S. history to be impeached twice. The Senate trial began in February, concluding on February 13th, with the Senate voting 57-43, falling short of the 2/3 majority needed for conviction, resulting in Trump's acquittal. Farewell address. On January 19, 2021, 2021, Donald Trump released a farewell video marking his final day as president. In the nearly 20-minute speech, Trump reflected on his journey and vision for America, saying, "4 years ago, I came to Washington as the only true outsider ever to win the presidency. I had not spent my career as a politician, but as a builder looking at open skylines and imagining infinite possibilities." He continued, "I ran for president because I knew there were towering new summits for America just waiting to be scaled. I knew the potential for our nation was boundless as long as we put America first." Reflecting on his transition from private life to public service, he said, "So I left behind my former life and stepped into a very difficult arena. America had given me so much, and I wanted to give something back." Quote, "Going through tough times is a wonderful thing, and everybody should try it once." Donald Trump has officially launched his campaign for the 2024 presidential election, once again seeking the Republican nomination to become the President of the United States. In his campaign, he is focusing on his core policies from his first term, particularly his America First approach, which emphasizes stricter trade and immigration policies. Trump has built a strong supporter base that values his economic policies, trade deals, and foreign policy decisions, and they are eager to see him return to office. He's highlighting his economic accomplishments, international trade deals, and foreign relations as key successes, and is presenting himself as a representative of the common people or real stakeholders of the country. Trump frequently reminds his supporters of his victories in 2016 and the political challenges he faced in 2020, framing his 2024 campaign as another significant battle he plans to win. He aims to strengthen his Make America Great Again agenda even further, promising to lead the country in a new direction that aligns with his policies and vision. Reactions to his campaign have been mixed, with both his supporters and political opponents engaging actively in debates around his campaign. The media and political commentators are also closely watching this run, expecting intense competition and significant developments as the election draws closer. As we look back on Donald Trump's journey, from a real estate mogul to the 45th President of the United States, and now a contender once again for the White House in 2024, one thing is clear: his impact on American politics is undeniable. Whether you agree or disagree with his policies, his legacy has reshaped the political landscape and sparked a movement that continues to drive his supporters today. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Trump's life and career, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more biographies and stories on influential figures. See you in the next episode of Bio Bytes.